I'm Darius, and today I have two of my favorite people on a Zoom call from both ends of the world. In the US, there's Ingrid Newkirk, who's founded PETA. And in India, we have Acharya Prashant, who's founded the Prashant Advait Foundation. And both these foundations have done very remarkable work. So PETA is today the largest organization that fights to protect animals, and this is true protection of animals. It's not the kind of protection of animals that just says, I love animals, but I eat them as well. And the Prashant Advait Foundation in India has done remarkable work, not only in the field of veganism, but also with women's rights and socio-spiritual awakening. So I guess the first question I have, since we have an activist and we have a spiritual leader, is what's the big deal about veganism? Why veganism? Why should we even be concerned about veganism? And Acharya Prashant, if you could share your thoughts, and then Ingrid, if you could share your thoughts, and then we can just let the conversation flow.
Hello, Ingrid, and hi, Darius. And yes, glad to be in this conversation. Why veganism? You see, veganism is very fundamentally related to the very definition of being a human being. I'm going to the extent of saying that we have animals, we have so many species of all kinds of beings, and then there are the Homo sapiens. So veganism is in one sense the qualifier. That's what makes human beings into a species that is fundamentally different from others. Now, how is that? You see, when you are an animal or any other life form, a tree or something, or an insect, a bird, your entire constitution, your life, is dictated by your biological programming. So you are configured and constrained to eat as per your biological design, to decide, choose, move, eat, sleep, mate, just as you have been configured by evolution, by biology, by your body. How are human beings different? Human beings are fundamentally different because they are to live not by their body, but by their consciousness. So let's then look at the definition of an animal. An animal is one who lives by the body. And a human being is one who lives by consciousness. And you are a human being, and if you respect consciousness much more than the body, which is material. So human beings are defined by the respect that they hold towards consciousness compared to the body. So we are not obliged to do something just because we can biologically do it. So for example, a lot of people say that because we can digest meat and because we have certain teeth that are supposed to be useful in cutting meat, therefore that proves that we can be meat eaters. No. Our life, our choices are to be determined by our consciousness. We respect consciousness. And if we respect consciousness, we cannot kill it anywhere it exists. We cannot hurt it, harm it. We have to rather nurture it. We have to love it. And that's what veganism is about. Wherever there is consciousness, respect it. Do not exploit it. There is consciousness in the bird, in the fish, in the animal, in the tree, obviously in the human beings. Respect that consciousness. When you are slaughtering an animal for food or medicine or leather or whatever, or fun, or just even exploiting it or hurting it, then you are valuing body over consciousness. And if you value body more than consciousness, then you are not a human being at all. Therefore, veganism to me is very central to the very definition of a human being. I'll go so far as to say, if you're not a vegan, you don't qualify to be called a human being. And that's not a dogma. I'm coming from a very logical, well thought out position. So that's what veganism is to me, essential humanity.
I agree with so much of what you've said, and I wanted to also thank you for all the work that your foundation has done, because one of the things about veganism to me is that it's against all violence, it's against all exploitation, it's against all harming and prejudice and all these bad things that human beings seem to fall into. And so you have done wonderful things that have affected many different species, including human women. So thank you for all that. I do believe there is a principle that should be followed, and that is that we don't want to be discriminating and exploiting and harming and hurting anyone. It doesn't really matter what color they are, what age they are, what gender they are, what species they are. If they're a living being, then we can either bully them, hurt them, kill them, or respect them and be considerate of them. And certainly we can't eat them, which is a very odd thing that we have decided over time to do, to take a breathing, thinking, feeling person and end their life, cut them into bits, let the blood drain out, and then stick them in our mouths. It's just incredible.
Wonderful.
And we shouldn't steal from them either and wear the skin they were born in. We shouldn't use them as if they are tools in laboratories to pour chemicals down their throats. And we certainly shouldn't take them away from their natural lives and chain them up and use them in circuses and temples and who knows what, just because we feel like it. That is supremacism. And I think you and I, all of us who are vegans, are against supremacism.
Wonderful. Very well said. And there's a very interesting word you used, person. What constitutes a person is something that we must take to the population in general. What is the definition of a person? Because in general, we define a person as a human being. If you are a human male, a human female, you qualify to be called a person. But if I call a parrot a person, that would sound weird to a few, cute to a few others, but normal to very few. So a person, if we could see that a person is defined not by his or her body or the species, but by the mere presence of consciousness. Consciousness, the moment it becomes the qualifying criteria, our decisions immediately change. But for that, first of all, we need to have a certain love and respect for consciousness, and that's the reason this little foundation here. Obviously, PETA has done great, remarkable, path-breaking work, and it's several decades old, and I truly, deeply appreciate what PETA has been doing since a long time now, worldwide, also in India. Our foundation is comparatively a nascent one, and it's the consciousness route that we are taking. So that's the reason why when we work for animals, we find we are working for all beings that exist, because they all are conscious. And we find that if we really have to work for animals, then honesty demands that we work for all exploited sections that exist on the planet. Be it those who are racially oppressed, or women, or people who are misled in whichever way. And that brings a kind of integrity to our work, a central axis. If you are conscious, then you deserve my respect, because my own welfare lies in me being able to respect consciousness. Why do I suffer? Why does any human being suffer? Because we forget that we are just not the body. The body has its own games, its own agendas. I have my purposes that are separate from the purposes of the body. For example, the body might want to sleep. I might not necessarily agree. The body might want to eat or jump around, or the body in a certain stage of life might demand procreation, and I do not extend my consent to all that. I am not the body, so I am not obliged to always concur with the body. The moment I see I am consciousness, something very magical happens. Wherever consciousness is seen, it becomes an expression of who I am. How can I kill myself then? I look at the rabbit, and in the rabbit's eyes, there is nothing different from what is there in my eyes. All right, the shine might be different, the form might be different, but the essential characteristic is the same. I do not want to die. The consciousness here says, well, there is more to explore, more to achieve. Probably there is something called liberation that is still left. So there is a certain hunger in my eyes. I see a certain hunger in the rabbit's eyes as well. Well, the rabbit might not be demanding liberation. It might just be asking for a carrot. But there is that desire there. So in killing the rabbit, I'm killing a part of myself, something very similar to myself. I could even say I'm killing myself when I kill anybody. If I hurt someone, I'm hurting myself. That's the route and the position that we are taking. And to our surprise, it's been cutting ice. In a short period of time, there have been people, really tough nuts, and chronic meat eaters for whatever reasons. And they have just been able to come around and do things. But equally, the state of treatment towards animals in India has been deteriorating. India has traditionally been home to the largest number of vegetarians in the world, but now only around 30%, less than 30% of the population is vegetarian. So violence towards animals is on the rise, and insensitivity is rife, especially among the younger people. We're trying to fight it out. Let's see.
I think part of it, though, isn't it, is that there is this desire among many young people to emulate what they believe is the Western world.
Yes.
Whether it's blue jeans or it's music or movies. And that can have a very bad influence. And so I remember going to a wedding in Maryland in the US, and there was an Indian couple, maybe about 40 years old there. And we sat at the same table, and we hadn't gone to the buffet yet. And I said, "Oh, are you vegetarian?" And both of them said, no, we're not vegetarian. And you think, I know you are. I said, well, we are, meaning my partner and I. We're vegetarian. I thought you might be. And she said, well, we usually are. And I thought, you were trying to adjust, thinking that I might find something wrong with you being vegetarian. That's a very sad state of affairs. And what's interesting to me is that the West is moving around this circle and coming back to the position that we shouldn't eat animals and that we shouldn't steal from animals. You know, the milk who the mother cow makes for her baby, her beloved baby. When you talk about consciousness, I always think of the look in those eyes of that mother who is watching her baby being taken away. So some human animal can steal the milk and put it as ghee or butter or cheese or whatever it is. In the West, there is a growing awareness, and maybe some of this is for animals out of concern, and some of it is because of all the devastating information we have been bombarded with about the ill effects of animal milk, eggs, meat on human health. So a selfish reason comes in there. And also because people know they should be caring about the environment. Even if they don't really care, they know they should care. And they are hearing that animal-based agriculture worldwide is taking our water resources, taking our land resources, cutting down the rainforest. So the consciousness is really in all these different ways, isn't it, of intellectual, of thought, and of awareness and of information. On the animal side, I think we can see they're all conscious. You can just look into those eyes and see fear in the slaughterhouse, terrible fear, wide eyes, petrified. But most of the time, they don't get choices. The rabbit can't have the carrot. The mother cow can't have her baby because they're dominated by the human species that doesn't think beyond what it wants itself. And I think your work in saying, look at yourself. You are more than your interests, your pleasures. You are a thoughtful, conscious being. Act like one is very, very important.
Yes. And also, what is happening is, in the Indian context especially, cultural reasons succeeded in keeping a vast majority of Indians vegetarian, if not vegan, since centuries. Compared to other parts of the world, cruelty towards animals or other life forms in India was lesser. Lesser to what extent, we might speculate, but certainly India was kinder towards life forms still recently. The only problem is the reasons were just cultural. And culture is man-made, so culture can change. Culture is time-bound, culture changes. So as you pointed out, the Indian youth, the Asian youth, in fact youth all over the world, they look at the West as their idol. And they want to emulate the Western culture because the image of the West is that of a successful and wealthy and powerful man. And who does not want to go after success and wealth and power? So that's what Indians have also been doing. They look at the West and say, wow, that's where you have real power and money. So they emulate the culture also, and that's where the cultural reasons meet their limits. If you are being vegan or vegetarian just because that's what goes in your family, in your tradition, or in your religion, then that won't take you very far. Cultures will change. Some other culture will come and eclipse your current culture. Then higher than the cultural reason is the biological reason, because this comes from within the organism. This does not come from the family, from tradition, from someone else, from the society. So, for example, when I look at a stray dog, and there is a feeling of empathy that arises. Without even knowing why I am empathetic, I want to do something for the dog. It's cold these days. So we want to take care of a few puppies that live close to our place. And we want to take care of them. We do not necessarily know the origins of that feeling, but still we want to do something. And that I take as higher than the cultural reason, because the feeling is mine to a greater extent. The culture is not really mine. The culture is a borrowed thing or an inherited thing. But the feeling arises from within me. And so the feeling works in a far better way and in a deeper way than the culture. India has been losing out due to the erosion of its culture. Feelings will help, but what really works is understanding. And that is the spiritual reason. So cultural, emotional, and then spiritual. When one really, really knows what it means to live, who one is, and what his relationship with the world is, then it becomes impossible to really hate someone or be insensitive to someone. And it's also not just about eating animals or hurting animals. One starts living from a different center, and there is a total change in personality. One, it's a thing that will probably make you smile. One becomes vegan even without knowing it. We witness that daily, and I am enjoying sharing it with you. There are so many people in our vicinity, in the field of our work, they have become vegan. They don't even know that they are vegans. And that I take as a very innocent and beautiful example of real veganism. Veganism arising from the heart. Veganism not as a concept borrowed from somewhere, but as a living thing that has just sprouted from your very center. You have come to realize what the curd is made of and where it comes from. You have just seen those things, and now you just can't do it. It's impossible. Even if you want to, you can't do it. I have seen instances. We had a long period of lockdown here at the time of COVID-19, 2020, a few months in 21 as well. So there were patches in which even medicines were not available. So we had a couple of cases in the foundation. Their B12 levels went down. And that happens. Once every few months it happens that you get yourself checked and find that B12 is borderline. So we just take organic supplements and they are very easily available, and you take the supplement for a month and you are okay. Because of the lockdown, even the supplements are not available. It didn't even occur to people to consume dairy or anything because the supplements are not available. They didn't declare it, but that's what they were de facto saying. We would rather die than hurt someone. They didn't make it dramatic and announce it in so many words. It remained subtle. But if you look at it, that's what they were practically saying. Let the B12 levels dip if they have to. We would prefer to go, but we just cannot bear hurting someone anymore. That's the magic of spiritual veganism. And I think the world will have to come around to that. You talked of environmental influences, you talked of climate change. All these things, to me, they go together. Climate action, protection of species going extinct, antinatalism, minimalism, veganism, these go together. And if the planet is to be saved, there is no option except the bundle of these five. And at the center of these five, to me, lies spirituality, and that's the route we are taking. Success has been mixed. It's just that the reach has to greatly increase. We have been pretty successful in the territory we have been able to cover. The problem is that we have not been able to cover a huge territory. First of all, we are limited to India. Secondly, even in India, because we are relatively nascent, so our reach is still limited compared to the work that needs to be done. Though we have, I think we are per month we are reaching out to no less than 40 to 50 million people, but much more needs to be done. Otherwise, the very existence of the planet, I do not see how far we are going.
I think everything we do is vital, and you never know what's going to work.
Yeah.
Because everybody is affected in a different way. Some people care about one thing, some people don't care about that, but they care about something else. So our approach is a scattershot approach. We'll try humor, we'll try seriousness, we'll try shock. And by shock, I mean we show reality. It's not that we invent this, as we show the photographs and the videos of what actually happens, and that is a shock. I think one of the US presidents once said, people are attacking me for what I say. He said, all I do is I tell the truth. And that is, people are so shocked by it that they attack me.
Yes.
But I think we have to be vigorous. We have to never be timid, never hold back, and never think that changing ourselves is enough. And I think that's what the foundation is so good at, because you say it's not about me, it's not about my family, it's not about, it's about everybody. Most of us, and I speak for myself, no matter how vegan we are, we've done so many things from the time we were born that hurt animals and hurt others.
That's true.
That we can never make up for it. I can think back to many things that I'm ashamed of now and had no idea at the time. When I was in India, I always said to my mother, I want to ride the Tonga. I never wanted to take my bicycle. I wanted to have the horse because I loved horses, and didn't realize how I was putting that poor animal through this strain for my amusement. I think we all have this baggage. And so it's not enough for us to stop eating and wearing and using animals. We have an obligation to undo some of the bad that we've done.
Yes.
And to go out and share what we have learned with other people. There's a saying about, who opened your eyes? And I think our obligation is to open as many hearts and minds and eyes as we possibly can. So we create this enormous force, and people should not be hesitant about that. Why are people scared to talk to other people about being vegan? What is that about?
You see, it's a question of what one values. I've thought over it a little, tried to examine it. What is it that I value? Do I value the appreciation of the other, the approval of the other, the things that flow to me if I just toe the line of the other? Or do I value love? Do I value compassion? Because of course, obviously there are benefits that come from not speaking up, not coming out. I might be a vegan, but I keep that to myself, and I allow myself a moral green card. I have done well. I am a vegan. I am not hurting anybody. What do I do if my neighbors are all very violent people? I have not caused that. I can do all that. All that stops when I say that if I know of it, that alone is sufficient to make it my responsibility. Also, it is my responsibility to know more and more. It's my responsibility to know more and more of what's going on outside and inside. And once I know of something, if I still don't act, if I don't own up things, then I am a big hypocrite. So that sense, that responsibility, that love has to be awakened. And if that love is not awakened, I just do not see our own species surviving. It's possible that other species somehow manage to survive, at least a few of them, but this one won't. Because we have just gone bonkers. The way we are consuming, we just cannot afford the level of consumption that we have, along with the levels of populations that we have. If I talk of India, we recently became the most populous country in the world. And these 140 crore or so people want to have the same level of per capita consumption as a German or an American. Now that's a very violent kind of multiplication. The quantity of Indians multiplied by the per capita consumption of Americans. There is no way even a dozen Earths can sustain that. And all of that is linked to veganism. It would be great if we could have a basic research seeing the average number of children that vegans have, the average consumption levels of vegans, for example, in terms of fuel consumption, electricity consumption, steel consumption, garment consumption, water consumption, and see that once you are vegan, chances are that you are more pro-life in general, and you are not just being kind towards animals. It's not just about your attitude and behavior and relationship with animals. You just become more human, and you become more survivable, more sustainable. I could go on and say we could talk of terrorism, we could talk of sectarianism, totalitarianism, all kinds of bad things and isms that are plaguing us today, and figure out a relationship how the solution has a synonym called veganism. If I say veganism is the solution to terrorism, that will sound absurd, obviously. But whatsoever is the solution to terrorism, veganism is its synonym. So these have to go together. If you are with the planet, if you are with everybody who is on this planet, if you are with basic sense, basic sensibility, with consciousness, you have to be a vegan. And you cannot be a vegan and say, I have 4 kids. Every new kid that takes birth today is definitely going to cause great loss to a large number of species. The earth just cannot afford more people. So veganism has to go hand in hand with antinatalism. You cannot be a vegan couple and say we want to have lots of kids. That's like indirectly killing so many animals. And several other choices as well. You cannot be a vegan, for example, and be full of hatred towards human beings. Because sooner than later, if you are hateful, that hatred will spill over to animals and birds and fish as well. It would already be there, and just that you don't know. I consume a lot of steel, for example. I want a mansion for myself. And we all know where steel comes from. We all know the relationship of steel with flowing water bodies. You cannot be a vegan and still be a huge fan of palaces and mansions and brick and mortar and say, I want the biggest house possible on this planet. That's not veganism. So veganism in that sense, probably the time has come to give it a broader definition with a more clearly defined center and that might just help more people to relate with it and understand what's going on. Otherwise, still, at least that's the scene in India, people think of veganism as something to do with food. If you don't eat something, you are vegan. Vegans are those who exclude certain food items from their diet. Now, that's such a restrictive definition of veganism. Even as you would say, dyed in the wool vegans, they would talk of veganism as diet and clothes. And maybe attitude towards animals. Okay, I find a stray dog limping, I give it some medical care, so I am a vegan. No, that to me, that's a bit narrow. I'm sure you too have been thinking about it and would throw some light on it. But to me, that's very restrictive, and also that limits its appeal. And also that's what makes people less empowered. You talked of hesitation that people feel in coming out, the vigor that they lack. Probably this is why. If I can see that my friend over here, if he is not vegan, he cannot be a proper human being, then I'll be impelled to do something about it if I have any kind of relationship with him. But if I say, he is already a nice man, just that he eats meat, just that he loves his coffee, milk coffee, but otherwise he's a great man, then I don't know how I'll be incentivized to again and again question him, poke him, probe him. I will feel no incentive. I need to be told that if he is not vegan, there is something very essential missing in his humanness. Something very essential. And if it's essential, then he is not even human. If the very essence is missing, how are you even human then? Now, that's what will really rankle me up and push me towards constructive or disruptive, whatever kind of action. And a lot of times, even disruptive action is needed. The videos that PETA makes, we have made good use of them. And watching the pics, sending the videos over to people who say that, well, yes, cruelty is there, but cruelty is everywhere and there is limited cruelty. When some of the videos from PETA, when we have been doing it since years now, in fact. I came across some of the activism that you have personally undertaken and those pics, and yes, as you said, they are disruptive and people need to be shocked, and that's what makes them think. Otherwise, we are just too well adjusted in our existing ways. We feel all is okay. That misplaced confidence is killing the animals and also our species.
But what you said so many things that I would riff off because I can't help but agree with them. And I think most interesting to me is that while India is perhaps departing from this wonderful concept of ahimsa, I mean, there can be nothing better. A true vegan means ahimsa in its proper meaning, because as you say, it's not just about this dog or this food or this jacket, or it's about an understanding of nonviolence. It's an understanding of respect. It's an understanding of consideration. It's about love, if you will. I mean, you don't have to love, but you have to be considerate and respectful. Recently, when we were talking about people being afraid to say something when they really must, everything depends on people speaking out. And you never know what's going to stick and what isn't going to stick. What you know is if you say nothing, nothing is going to stick. So recently I was in Mumbai just for a little while, and I did a demonstration by taking a public shower. It was all very modest. It was just the illusion that it was a public shower. And people criticized me on Twitter and they said, why is she doing this? Why can't they just threw rocks at me? And I thought, it doesn't matter, because if one person thought about it and took in that message that the whole world is in trouble because just a little meat meal is the equivalent amount of water as showering for a whole week, it's that much. Facing drought. India is facing more drought than almost anybody except Africa. It is a critical thing. They said, why doesn't she do this in Europe? Why doesn't she do this in the United States? How dare she do this in India? And I thought, well, India needs to hear this lesson. I also do it in the US. I also do it in Europe. The world needs to hear this lesson. And Europe and the US are using more water than anybody in India, but India will bear the consequences. So we all need to do as much as we can and share our information with each other so we can save ourselves collectively, look after each other as brothers and sisters collectively, and break down these barriers of nationalism, genderism, all these isms that are the wrong isms that are separating us from each other. And instead of, when you hear a new idea, putting up a barrier and responding with hate and venom, we need to try to break that down and say, I'm just talking to you about something I heard, a fact I know. I didn't always know this. I'm grateful that someone showed me these things and I am sharing them with you. So together, independently if you like, we can change the world into being a kinder place. As someone once said, a famous person whose name I can never get right, said there are 3 things in life that are important. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. And the third is to be kind. And if you are kind, that's really all you ever need to do to get through life as a decent person. I honestly believe that. Perhaps you do too.
I'm, first of all, not just glad, but actually grateful that you did that in India, in Bombay. India needs disruptive activism of the kind you espouse, and I really wish that you and PETA do much more of that, irrespective of the criticism or even hate that comes your way. I'm sure all of us are strong enough to take that for the sake of several little beings and big beings and human beings. So I'm sure we'll happily take that. And yes, things are going downhill in India. Hate and intolerance and dogmatism of all kinds, and I'm sure you know about all of that. So all that is going hand in hand. Why are you telling this to us? Go and tell this to the Europeans and the Americans. Or why are you telling this to the Hindus? Go and tell the same thing to the Muslims. Or why are you saying these things on our festivals? Go and tell this to the other community on their festival. So these things are happening. And all that is essentially, even more tragic, Ingrid, because one of the greatest Indic religions is veganism. You know, another name for Jainism is veganism. And that's not me saying that. You visit a Jain scholar and he would very gladly say that the Jain philosophy and the Jain code of conduct is just so close to veganism. And Jainism, it is so old that just as a thought, as a stream of thought, it is believed to be older than even Hinduism. And Hinduism in itself is a very, very old religion. So India is that kind of land where spirituality meant ahimsa. Wisdom meant non-violence. There is no name that can be used to sum up all spirituality better than the name ahimsa. And all kinds of unfortunate things are now happening in India. Chicken consumption is India is the fastest growing market for chicken consumption now, and hearts should bleed on hearing this kind of a statistic, when there are many countries where actually chicken consumption or pork or meat that's going down. India of all places is where it is rising. So that's extremely unfortunate, and yes, it's inevitable that in the coming years PETA will have to focus more and more energy on India, because this is where action is needed more and more. You very rightly put that the West is coming a full circle now, 360 degree. They are coming to realize that plant-based diets are superior when it comes to health, that vegan lifestyle is far better when it comes to mental health. They are seeing all those things, but India is going in some other direction. So a lot of things need to be done here. Now this was the tragic part of the thing. The encouraging part of the thing is India already has a fertile soil when it comes to non-violence. Even the most violent person here at least conceptually knows that he is doing a wrong thing and that he is a sinner. Even if you kill an ant, you have done something you shouldn't have done. That Indians instinctively know. It's in the air. It's in the soil. We know that. Just that we know that as a concept. We know that as a thing of culture. We don't understand where it is coming from. So when I said that 5 things go together, and I don't know, 4 or 5, antinatalism, minimalism, veganism, this, another thing that can be very importantly added to this is revival of true religiosity. Now I don't know how that would sound to you, but that should not sound very weird when you consider that I said that Jainism is de facto veganism. And the ahimsa core of Jainism is something it shares with Hinduism and Buddhism. So if the true essence of religiosity can be invoked, that would go a long distance towards making veganism easier. And when I say religion, I obviously do not mean the organized kind of religion in which the church, the temples, the priests, they become dominant and codes of conduct are enforced. Of course, I hope I am not invoking the Taliban in your mind. I'm not talking of that kind of religiosity. I'm talking of what should I say? Essential spirituality. The search for one's own existence, one's own identity. Who am I? Why do I exist? Those kinds of questions, more philosophical than ritualistic, more inquiry based than dogmatic. So if the moment that comes, especially in India, if people can see what the essence of religion is, for example, what Vedanta says. Now, Advait Vedanta is the crown jewel among all Indian philosophies. And Advait is a word that I repeatedly tell my readers and listeners. Advait is a word that can be very, very correctly translated as ahimsa. non-duality and non-violence are much the same thing. But only if we could have the right definition of duality and violence. As long as we just go by social culture and popular definitions, violence is when you hurt the other. The moment it comes to you, just even if just as an idea, that violence is when you do not see that you and the other have a shared consciousness. Violence is when you create an otherness with the other, when you make the other as an entity totally separate from you. That's when violence starts. And that when those things start happening, veganism just blooms like a wildflower, unplanted. Nobody planted it, nobody nurtured it, nobody seeded it, nobody put the fertilizers or anything. It just happens. It just happens. And humbly, I would like to say, we have seen modest success. The proportion of people who are associated with us turning vegan is very high. It's just that we need more and more people to whom message can reach. But once the message reaches, the probability that the person will turn vegan is unimaginably high. I won't say 80% or 100%, but very high. I won't be surprised if it's close to 20-25%. So, and turning a vegan in India is made difficult by the doodh dahi culture, especially in North India. So if we find that out of every five people who get to be associated with us for a significant period, at least one is turning vegan, I feel encouraged, and I just want to just push the accelerator, go for vigorous action, as you said, and make the message reach as many people as possible. We don't have time. We just don't have time. So it has to be swift.
I was curious that you raised Jainism, because when I was in school, all the children were always asked, what would you like to be when you grow up? And they would say a ballerina, an astronaut. And I would say, I want to be a Jain, because I always thought the values of Jainism were so wonderful. I do go sometimes before the pandemic to give talks at Jain conferences, Jaina in US. And I feel now, since Guru Chitrabanerjee has died, that it's my obligation, again, there's that word, my responsibility, to do all I can to ask Jains particularly to be true to ahimsa, because at the conferences, it's the dude culture that comes to the fore again, and you see long lines for the creamy desserts and the milky this, that, and the other, and very short lines for the vegan food. And I think, come on now, all of us have religious values or ethical values that we say we believe in. Now we have to be strong and curb these carnal instincts that we have, these bodily desires that we have, because they pass. You eat something, you're full. You don't then say, oh, I wish I had had such and such. You're full. So at these conferences, I'm always saying, come on, look at the mother cow, look at the baby, who sometimes they take away and stuff, they kill, they let him starve. They don't do it with their own hand, but they do. And stuff him with straw and put him near his mother, so the mother thinks she's making milk for this dead child. Look, we cannot, for a moment on your lips, you cannot allow this to happen. So those values of religion, of ethics, of morals, of showing, as you say, that we are more than bodily functions. We are a thinking, feeling, sentient being with things we can do to make the world a better place. I think Christian, Buddhist, Jain, Hindu, it doesn't matter. We are all in this together and we must do our best. And we must talk to as many people as we possibly can about doing our best.
Especially in India, if you can have a dialogue with Jain scholars, serious Vedantis, and Buddhist leaders, I'm so sure that they'll easily lend their support. And veganism actually is at the forefront of ethics. It is at the forefront of ethics. And the problem that veganism is tackling is essentially a philosophical problem, even a religious problem. What is man's relationship with the universe, with the sentient universe? What is a human being's relationship with the sentient universe? It's a question, it's a very important question in philosophy that veganism is very successfully answering. So if we engage with streams that have a philosophical base, like Vedanta, like Buddhism, like Jainism, surely the scholars would be willing to come on board and help raise awareness. And once, at least in India, the population sees that there is a moral edge to being a vegan. Moral edge approved by religion. So religious morality. So there is a moral edge to being a vegan. More and more people would want to join in. And yes, a lot needs to be done. And let's see. At least this particular conversation would go to obviously from the PETA side to the PETA channels and to our channel. And there, if I estimate 1 in every 3, 4 or 5 videos deals directly with veganism. And the remaining 2, 3, 4 videos out of 5 where I'm not directly talking of veganism, then there are indirect oblique references. I would, for example, if I have to give an example of cruelty, I would be given the example of a cow, or the same kind of example that you just gave. You know, the cow and the calf and the stuffed body and the milk making machine she's turned into, and enforced insemination and all those things. So doing our bit, and let's see how it turns out. The religious angle, just one last bit from my side because it just occurred to me. I thought I would add it. The religious angle is all the more important when you have an uphill climb like this one. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna, his central philosophy is Nishkam Karma. Do the right thing and don't think of the consequences. So 2 things. 1, do only the right thing. To the best of your ability, find out what is selflessly right. So figure it out and then plunge yourself into it. And then don't be too bothered about the consequences. So when you have taken up a mission like veganism, like PETA, I think the philosophy of Krishna becomes really indispensable.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ingrid. My pleasure.
Thank you both for this very wonderful session. I think it could have gone on for a lot longer, and I think there are lots of avenues where we could regroup and have the discussion again. I heard the Jaina conference, I heard Vedanta, I heard disruption, lots of good things. So let's keep this going, and thank you both for being such powerful champions and fighters, not only for veganism, but as we've found out, veganism is the underpinning for just being a decent, compassionate human being. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.